Hello, Jaguar students. It's your friendly neighborhood math teacher, Mr. Allred, and I'm here bringing it to you live with Unit 2, mini lesson number 2, about adding and subtracting decimals. I'd like to welcome you to the show. Today's learning goal is to be able to explain how to add and subtract positive and negative decimals. I'll tell you what, everything that we're doing today with adding and subtracting decimals, positive and negative ones, is taking everything you learned from 6th grade about decimals and everything we learned in Unit 1 about adding and subtracting positives and negatives and putting them together, okay? So all the same rules we talked about in Unit 1, they're still going to apply here in Unit 2, okay? The only thing that's going to be different is instead of having whole numbers, we're going to have some decimals, all right? Here we go. I wanted to make you aware this is your second entry in Unit 2. This is Unit 2, mini lesson number 2, adding and subtracting with decimals. And by the time you watch this, when we get to class tomorrow, it'll be October 4th. Okay? So this is entry number 2, 10-4-17, Unit 2, mini lesson number 2, adding and subtracting with decimals. Okay? You're going to want to write the number 2 on the top right side of that page, which is entry number 2, and we are going to get started. Okay? Over here on the left, it says, how do you add and subtract decimals? Think about place value. Is place value important? On Edpuzzle, it's going to ask you what you remember about place value. That's right. Place value is super important, okay? It tells us if we have 0.05, it tells us that's 5 hundredths instead of 5 tenths or 5 thousandths. And those are very, very different things, okay? So when we're adding and subtracting positive and negative decimals, I've got about 4 different steps that I need you to take. The first thing I need you to do is I need you to make sure your decimals are lined up when you're adding and subtracting them. So for example, if you try to put 3.12 over 2.23 and you don't line them up like this, okay, you're going to be very, very confused when you try to line your decimals up. That's not what you want to do. You want to line them up just like I have them right now, so that you can add the hundreds place, 2 plus 3 is 5, add the tenths place, 1 plus 2 is 3, and then add the ones place, 3 plus 2 is 5. And 3.12 plus 2 and 2300 should be 5 and 3500. You got to make sure that you line your decimals up. It's super important. The next thing you're going to want to do is if you happen to be adding a decimal to a whole number, I would throw that decimal there at the end. So if you're trying to add 6.64 and 4, let's just throw a decimal point in there just so that we can make sure it still stays lined up. Still stays lined up, okay? We still got to line them up, okay? That's really important when we're adding and subtracting decimals, okay? If you want to go to the next level here, you can even use zeros as a placeholder if you need to make sure that both numbers have the same number of digits after the decimal point. So in that other example, 6.64 plus minus 4, you might even want to throw 2 extra zeros in there, okay, just as extra placeholders when you're doing that math problem so you don't get confused, okay? This way it makes it really easy to subtract. 4 minus 0 is still 4. 6 minus 0 is 6. And 6 minus 4 is still 2. That's 2.64, okay? Now, here you go. The most important thing is that the rules we talked about in Unit 1 are still the same here when we're adding and subtracting decimals. You could line them up all day long. Use zeros as placeholders all day long. But if you don't remember the things we talked about in Unit 1 about subtracting a negative being like adding a positive and adding a negative being like subtracting a positive, then you are gonna be confused. Okay? So when you're adding and subtracting each column, you're going to add them just like you would add or subtract integers and bring down the decimal point. So for example, if your math problem says 4.55 plus negative 3.32, we've got to remember that adding a negative is like subtracting a positive. We've got to remember that. Okay? And I'm going to write that in here. Adding a negative is like subtracting a positive. So we can rewrite that math problem, we know we can, as 4.55 minus 3.32. That's going to make it a lot easier for us if we remember those rules from Unit 1. That's going to help us out while we're doing this math problem. So then we know 5 minus 2 is 3, 5 minus 3 is 2, and 4 minus 3 is 1. That's got to be 1 and 23 hundredths, or 1.23. Okay? Those are my 4 steps. That's what you're going to do to add and subtract positive and negative decimals. Okay? you're going to take some time right now on Edpuzzle to write a summary of what you learned. Use this was mainly about, first, next, and finally. Thank you. Great job writing that summary. I really appreciate it. I wanted to do one more example for you before I let you loose. Okay, and that's right here at number 3, right here at number 3, where it says negative 2.62 plus 1.57. I want you to think about for a second negative 2 plus positive 1 and see if we can figure out how we can solve this math problem. If we had negative 2 plus positive 1 way back in Unit 1, what would we have done? That's right, we probably would have drawn some chips, 2 negative chips. That's a really, really large chip. Give me a second. What if we had drawn 2 negative chips, just like this one, and we put 2 little negative signs in there, minus sign there, and a minus sign there. And what if we had drawn one more chip, not like this one, but we put a positive sign in it? Okay, that's what would happen if we had negative 2 plus positive 1. So how could we rewrite negative 2.62 minus 1.5 or plus 1.57? Okay, I think that I should figure out what you think. Tell Edpuzzle what you think. I think we could take 2.62 and subtract 1.57 from us, okay? And that might tell us what the difference between those two numbers is, the difference between their absolute values, okay? If we subtract those two things from each other, we get 1.05. I know that the negative is bigger than the positive, so I know my answer is going to be negative 1.05. So I used all my rules there from Unit 1. I knew that I was adding 2 different signs, and the negative was bigger than positive, so I subtracted, and I kept the sign of the larger number, okay? Whenever you're doing these problems, take it 2 numbers at a time, and think back to Unit 1 the whole time. So all of these are just Unit 1 problems with decimals, okay? That's all they are. Everything we did in the last unit, these are still the same as those. They just happen to have some decimals there in them, okay? Good luck to you. Remember that of all my students I've ever taught, you are one of them. We're going to work in my station on 1 through 10, and then the bottom 1 through 3, and then you're also going to work some in small groups on those things, okay? And you're also going to work in small groups on the back, which is classwork, the U try section on the back. Thank you so much for paying attention to these notes videos, okay? I really appreciate everything that you do for our society. Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours. Goodbye.